Hello, yung Spot, I'm George. Welcome to a new episode on this series on setting up load balancer infrastructure. I found a security flaw on my implementation on the previous episode, where I set all the necessary resources to allow my load balancer to forward requests to an ec2 instance. Today's episode, we are going to address that security flaw. So, let's start coding. So I was reviewing the implementation that I did on the previous episode, which you can access right here. And I found a major security flaw. So to quickly sum up what I've done previously, I have set up the necessary resources to allow my load balancer to forward web requests to an Nginx application that is running on my ec2 instance. So let's head to my AWS web console so I can point out what security flaw this is. So this is the ec2 instance that runs my Nginx application. And the problem is this instance has a public IP address. And if I attempt to access the unsecured port 80 directly on my web browser using this public IP address, I can get through successfully. This means my load balancer is not necessarily protecting my Nginx application from access to the internet. The issue with this is that the firewall settings on the ec2 instance allows for access to the internet on all ports, which is even more serious issue. So to verify this, let me head back to my AWS web console. And if I go to the security tab on this section of the page and click on the security group, and this is where the fear is revealed. If you have a look at the inbound rules, the only rule that's provided in this security group allows for access on all TCP ports from the internet. So what I'm going to do is edit this inbound rule and then remove this rule. And if I go back to the tab that contains direct access to my ec2 instance public IP address right here and refresh this page, the page is no longer loading, which is what I want to happen. However, with this rule removed, what happens now is when I try to access nginx.publishspot.ml, so let's open a new tab. I get a 504 gateway timeout, which is not what I'm expecting. This is because on the background, the load balancer is unable to talk to the ec2 instance via the target group. And the reason for this is there are no rules to satisfy and the inbound access to the ec2 instance is totally blocked. Remember, we removed the one existing rule in there. And so to fix this, let me head back to my VS Code session. And then open my main.tf. And then all the way to the end of this file. I am going to create a new security group ingress rule resource. And then I'm going to set the type property to ingress. And as the name implies, this covers any inbound traffic. And then I'm going to set the from port and the to port properties to point to port 80, which is my Nginx port. And I'm also going to add the protocol property and set the value to TCP. This resource needs a security group ID property, which is the actual security group resource where this gets attached to. This security group ID property needs to point to the security group attached to my ec2 instance. So what I will do is define a new variable in my variables.tf. And then set a default value that contains the security group ID attached to my ec2 instance to implement the simplest solution to fix the security flaw. And now if I head back to my main.tf, I can then set the source of the security group ID to the variable that I just defined. I also need to add another property called source security group ID. This will point to the security group that will initiate the inbound access to the ec2 instance resource. So what I'm going to do is use a reference that points to the security group that I have set up and attached to my load balancer. So if we quickly scroll to the top of this page, and find the resource that I've created for my load balancer. And this is the resource. So I have to set the value of that property to point to the ID of this resource. So let's head back to that block and update the value. And now that that's all done, let me head to my VS Code terminal and start updating my infrastructure. So as usual, I'm going to start exporting my TF workspace environment variable. And then initiate my AWS credentials using AWS Vault. And then I'm going to start running Terraform init. And then Terraform plan. And then Terraform apply. And now, if I switch to my browser and refresh this page, my Nginx application is working again. And then if we verify the next tab and check if we can access port 80 directly from the public IP address of the ec2 instance, this will eventually time out, so we're good. And that's a wrap. Stay tuned as I continue to explore better ways of implementing infrastructure code for load balancers. In the meantime, let me know your thoughts in the comments below and send me some likes if you find this useful. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like the content on this channel. Until next time, keep learning and stay safe. See ya.